Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to race number 20, the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visuals as we get ready to go racing here at the short track known as North Wilkesboro. Seth Cole alongside of Anthony McCurry. Anthony, obviously tomorrow, all across America, there'll be fireworks for the 4th of July. If you're in a small town like me, we're firing them off here tonight as we speak, but short track racing for 150 laps, we might be in for our own version of fireworks today.
Yeah, every time you go to a shorter track with a lot of cars on it, especially in stock cars, it seems that the fireworks fly more often than not. Some of these cars are going to come out of this race looking a lot more poorly than they went into the race, but that's just short track racing, and sometimes that's how you need to win these races.
Getting ready here today for the Motorsports Drop 150K here at North Wilkesboro. Kind of interesting that North Wilkesboro comes up race 20 on the schedule, as last year it actually was a race situated in the round of 8. We end up seeing Michael Frisch take the checkered flag in that one, locking himself into the championship 4. But here it's got just as much prevalent because it's an opportunity for a driver to lock themselves into the playoffs. I mean, look at our front row. You've got right now the 73 of Jonathan Oates, back-to-back pole positions for him, as he also was on the pole last week. He's still looking for his first trip to victory lane. He finished second in last week's race, just to mention as well. And alongside of him, you got Nathan Rabideau. These are two guys that are up there in the top 3 in the point standings right now. Oates, the points leader, and Rabideau in third. If they win here today, they're automatically locked into the playoffs.
Indeed, and that's kind of a bit of weight on their shoulders, knowing that it's late in the season. You got to start making moves if you want to get into the championship hunt, and a track to do it at would be this one, because if you can get to the low line, we've seen time and time at this racetrack where if you get to the low line, then you're more often than not going to have the advantage around the racetrack. So if you can hug that inside line, keep everyone at bay, and the speeds are low enough that you can really take it door to door if you need to, that in combo with everything else that they need to do in order to get into the championship, it's all on the table. And starting on the front row, it even helps even more, because now you get to control the race from the best starting positions possible.
Also starting off in the third position is Sean Butler. He's 4th in points coming into this race. So you've actually got 3 of your top 4 starting up here in the first 2 rows. Where's the guy that's 3rd in points? Well, or make that 2nd in points, that would be Andrew Schwartz. Didn't exactly have the best of runs last week at Nashville Fairgrounds. Well, I should say 2 weeks ago, last outing, but it was 2 weeks ago since we had an off week in between now and then. But typical Andrew Schwartz likes to start towards the back and work his way to the front, rolling off from 26th. Not necessarily certain, just based off what we saw, the hardships he had finishing multiple laps down last week, though, if he might not have wanted to change his strategy up a little bit here, get himself better starting track position.
That's kind of a double-edged sword, because he was towards the front of the field a lot last time around, so not being able to be safe no matter where you are on the racetrack, I would feel a little bit better starting at the back personally, because now you can see what's happening in front of you. You can kind of gauge what the other drivers are going to do. That being said, if the whole track gets blocked up, there's not a whole lot of time to slow down, but the strategy can play out. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not he can make it work. Passing at this track, it's not exactly an easy task. We'll have to see how we can navigate through the field, but if he can indeed get up there, this might be a winning strategy late in the run. We'll have to find out. There's a lot of laps to run, 150 around this racetrack as the cars start rolling off. Seth, it's late in the season and high drama is going to strike. What are some of the predictions that you're going to see in this race, knowing that we are so late in the season and championship hopes for some of these drivers are on the line?
Only 8 races left in the regular season, including tonight. And if the previous race at North Wilkesboro taking place last season, about 8 months ago, is anything to go by, you're going to see some desperation moves. They went 3 wide several occasions back in that previous race here at North Wilkes. I'm expecting the same thing to take place here today. However, if we kind of base off what we saw at Nashville Fairgrounds, prepare for possibly some long green flag racing, which means these drivers are going to have to be very methodical on how they work their way through lap traffic. I mean, if you remember last week, we didn't even talk about the eventual winner, Josh Parker, until lap traffic started coming into play. He was the one that was able to really maneuver his way through the slower cars, work his way up to the front. Once he got there, nobody was able to challenge him. So I think it could be a little bit of a case of deja vu here again. Bear in mind, though, it's daytime conditions as opposed to Nashville a couple weeks ago. So it will be a little bit slicker for these guys on the long run. Green flags in the air, and we are racing in the Motorsports Drop 150K. Oh, and already contact for second. Rapido into the wall, Butler down towards the infield, Grass, 4 wide into 3.
That could have been bad. I'm surprised that Rapido was able to gather it up. He was some kind of sideways coming off of turn 2, but has gathered it, lost a ton of positions, gone from second, or battled for second, back to 7th place, and continuing to lose positions. Tristan Ray is coming up, or make that Spencer Ray is coming up to the inside very quickly to try and challenge for that position. You got Tristan Hagenstein back here as well, battling. So, that good on Rapido for keeping it together. Is in front of him. That's somebody that went up the track, but he's also gathered it back up. I believe Spencer Ray's around.
And that's going to bring out the first caution of the evening here as Spencer Ray in the 85, making it actually the 4. That's gone around on the back straightaway, was running just outside of the top 10, around the 11th, 12th position. I think he might have gotten that car on the brakes quickly enough. Not a lot of runoff space onto the inside before meeting a steel guardrail, but looks like he kept that thing pretty well in one piece, so they have dodged an early bullet here at North Wilkesboro for our first caution of the evening.
He was heading straight for the inside guardrail, did manage to hold on to it. I've gone back and looked at it, and I think that this might have been a solo spin, and this is what happens when slick tires meet a bit of uneven pavement, as I think he just dipped below the white line and got into the grass.
It was, I believe, the 035 of Brett Pancari behind him, so that would have actually been a battle around the 9th position at the time. As you mentioned, very fortunate. He got on the brakes, did not hit anything. That grass is pretty slick. It's not going to scrub off a whole lot of speed. And fortunately as well, he kept that car down to the inside, so all the oncoming traffic had plenty of room to maneuver their way around him. So very fortunate that wasn't bigger than it possibly could have been. And it gives these drivers now an opportunity after the first couple of laps to kind of catch their breath, get the early race jitters out, and now start setting to work. As it's going to be a couple of Fords that'll be leading us back to green momentarily, with Jonathan Oates, Cosminus Shinoshi right now the top 2 over Matthew Zwack, Jordan Worth, and Nathan Rabideau. Now, one thing we've got to talk about here real quick, if you folks will notice when they come down here into 3 and 4, we've got to highlight the choose cone here for tonight because it played big dividends into who eventually won the race 2 weeks ago. You'll see there's a line that crosses from the top to the bottom of the racetrack right here. Look at that middle hash mark just after that white line. That's the choose cone area. They cannot hit that. They have to be to the outside or the inside of that hash mark by the time we get the 1 to green signal in order for them to officially choose which lane they want to restart in. Remember a couple weeks ago, Anthony, Brian Mercurio was up there in the top 3 pretty much the entirety of that race, led the first half of the race, but he did not get to his lane before the choose cone dropped to the back and eventually finished, I think it was in the 15th position.
Yeah, that can make or break a race for you. It's very important that these drivers acknowledge that it exists because, like you said, back in Nashville, up in 3rd place, had a fast car, could have taken the win. And as you see, Oates went up to the outside line. That's what these drivers are going to have to do when we get ready to go back to a green flag. If you hit the middle line, as Seth alluded to, you have to go back to the back of the pack. You have to EOL, and that is a race killer if it's late in the race. If it happens now, it's not terrible, but it's still not, it's not an ideal situation you want to find yourself in. So knowing that you have to choose a lane, it's pretty abrupt as well. You can barely see that line, especially when you're sat in the cockpit of these cars. It's hard to see these lines. And this one especially because of how low it sits and where it's at. So these drivers, very important that they choose a line, or you might risk losing a race, throwing your race away. Too early for that. Green flag is out. Oates not wasting any time. Huge jump. Clear to the inside as they battle for second behind.
Jonathan Oates, of course, as mentioned, coming up that runner-up finish a couple weeks ago at Nashville. Very good at the short tracks, but still chasing race win number 1 as it's going to be side-by-side for 3rd. Cosminus Shinoshi will clear for the 2nd spot, leaving Jordan Worth and that Stacy Compton throw back to the inside of Matthew Zwack, who was the pole sitter a few weeks ago back at Monza. He'll slide into 4th ahead of Nathan Rabideau, and then there's 2 weeks ago, 3rd place finisher at Nashville, Tristan Hagenstein up here. So no surprise that we're seeing drivers that did well at Nashville a couple weeks ago doing well here, and I saw a car sideways back there over in turn 4.
I believe that's the 70 of Zach Hudson. He's actually gotten back going the right direction. Yellow is out yet again. And that could have been another spin, maybe down the front straightaway. I have to go back and see what happened, but doesn't look like there's any other cars directly involved with this one. It looked like that the 70 was the only one that was slow.
Saw a number of drivers that really were slow there in turn 4, possibly in reaction to the spin by Hudson. I saw Gary Waterworth and Jake Poulin. They were slow leaving the scene. Also looked like the 4 of Spencer Ray might have actually gone around and hit the entrance to pit lane wall. He's got a lot of damage on the front end of his machine. We'll go back, take a more in-depth look there. Second caution out of turn 4 on lap 11.
Well, I might have misspoke completely. I don't think that Zach Hudson had anything to do with this. I think he was avoiding what happened. The 12 of Waterworth was on the outside line. I think he just got a little bit... I think he had a little bit of oversteer going into turn 3, and he got spun around, and everyone kind of bunched up behind, including the Spencer Ray, who was involved in the first incident.
Also involved in that was the 46 of Robert Dorman. Possibly as well the 78 of Rudy Valentine, our winner from a couple of weeks ago at the Monza Road Course. Maybe even the 125 of Corey Suma might have gotten a piece of this. And you see right there on the right side of your screen, it's hard to tell. Like that was Suma that actually got into the back of the 4 of Spencer Ray, spun him down into that pit wall.
Yeah, they came in late. I don't think he quite was able to get on the brakes in enough time in order to avoid that one, but that stack up on turn 4. I was going through turn 4 rather, and again, it's this car, the car breaking loose. Earlier with Spencer Ray, was getting down onto the inside and clipping the grass. This time on corner entry, Waterworth couldn't gather it up, and almost had it gathered up, but then car breaking free throughout the center of the turn on rotation, and everyone not able to slow down. So it seems tonight that the big talk is track temps and tire grip, because it seems like tonight, more often the last 2 that we've had, it's been grip related. Now the first one was due to getting onto the grass. Slick tires on grass isn't going to work out very well, but this one, overcooking it going into turn 3 and then losing grip. But the track temps, I don't know how they are, but we might have Oates EOLing. I don't think he got the. I think he barely got below that cone. It was really close between him and Cosmo Shinoshu, but interesting that Jonathan Oates, he took the outside line on the last restart. He chooses the inside lane here on the second restart. I don't think he quite knew how many laps were left before we were going back to green. I think it was more or less that he saw it and then he remembered he had to pick a lane. But Oates will line up on the inside this time. Worth to the outside. Zwack will be on the top side of row 3, or make that row 2. And Nishioshu will be bottom side of row 2. Green flag back in the air, and it didn't look like it mattered which lane he picked because he got away. Did Oates battle for 3rd place between Nishioshu and Zwack as they continue to be side by side? Throw Isaac Johnson in the mix as he's making his presence felt in the top 5.
Yeah, Isaac Johnson up there right on the back bumper of the 18, trying to get around Nathan Rabideau for 5th place. Behind them, you've got Davey Davis in the 305, Tristan Hagestein in the 27. Got a car falling to the back. That's Noah Carmichael, and it's actually a wreck back there over in the middle of 1 and 2. Caution is going to fly for the 3rd time here today. Carmichael, a lot of front-end damage on that machine. That was, I believe, Robert Dorman that came to a stop, allowing the 49 to spin that thing back around in the right direction. Let's go back to 1 and 2, see what happened.
I think that Dorman might have also gotten a piece of this one. I'm not entirely sure. I think he might have just been on the brake, so they were 3 wide.
Yes, they were. That's the 18 of Umar Diallo, and I believe the 54 of Seth Noel was the car on the inside line. They even made contact before they got to turn 1. That was actually just past the start-finish line where the initial contact began, and then they were all basically in the gathering up stage by the time they got to the entry of the corner.
That was not enough banking in order to really gather the thing up, and the inside line also, the track kind of closes up. The front straightaway is kind of wider than you'd expect it to be, but then you get down into turn 1 and all of a sudden the wall closes in, the pit wall that is, it closes in, and then by that time you're in the turn and there's no runoff to the inside. And I don't think that the 54 ever turned. I think he just went straight on, and it looks like he was able to grab grip, or if he had a tire going down or whatever have you, and could not gather it up. And as a result, Carmichael gets the worst out of all of it as he's facing the wrong direction, having to spin around.
I'll tell you, sometimes at short tracks, it's all about dodging a bullet. We're going to go looking from the back bumper of the 32 of Sean Butler. Take a look at this of how close he was to being clipped in the left rear quarter panel by the 54 down here into turn one. And that's a guy that's trying to battle for a playoff position.
At least you were in front of it. If you see it in your mirror, you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. If it's happening in front of you, then panic mode kind of gets better. But man, having that happen so close, knowing that you have a playoff spot possibly in the ballots, stuff like that will spike your heart rate up pretty quickly. So everyone got out of it okay as far as people that were in the championship hunt. We're still setting them up, still running under yellow flag. But Seth, with the championship coming up, people like that, they don't want to find themselves in these kind of positions too much. From a driver's perspective, you can maybe allude to it a little bit. If you're a driver and you have stuff like that happen around you, do you think about it much throughout the race, or when the race is over, do you eventually go back and think about it?
It's different drivers have different mentalities. There's sometimes I'll talk to drivers week after week, and they're just out there trying to have consistent finishes. They're trying to find victory lane. They say, I'll worry about until we get to that regular season finale. I'll worry about what my position is on whether I'm going to make it into the playoffs or not. There's a guy that I talked to, though, from a league that said every single race, what he would do is he would look at where that cutoff line was for the playoffs. He would single out 2 or 3 drivers and what he would call it, manage the gap between him and those specific drivers, just to make sure in case he ran into trouble one week, he'd be able to counter it the following week. So it all really varies on the drivers, and obviously a lot of them that ran well a couple of weeks ago at Nashville had their eyes on this one. Otherwise, other drivers I think came into this race just planning for survival and maybe try and pick up a couple of victories in some road courses we got coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, there's a green flag back out in the air. Jonathan Oates, again, gets away cleanly. Battled for second place between Worth and Inioshu. At the moment, that could have been a bit of a bobble coming up from the 92, but Worth does clear for second place. Behind them, you got the 18 of Swag battling Isaac Johnson for the 4th position. And now Rabideau, who was involved earlier, has quite a bit of back-end damage after getting smacked out to the outside wall. No caution was brought out for it, but a significant amount of rear-end damage to that 93, still soldiering on the inside line. Doesn't seem like that rear-end damage is affecting him too much. This is a short track, not really aero-dependent, this track is, but still not wanting that much damage on the back end of the car to possibly have some long-term effects, but at the moment still running very well. He's battling now Davey Davis to the inside. Looks like he's going to get the inside position at least, but though Rabideau pulls ahead anyway.
Rhino Rocky just behind them in the 8th position. He had a good run at Nashville a couple of weeks ago, and just behind him Tristan Hagenstein. How about this battle back here just outside of the top 10? Jack Painter, good run there for the 22 as he's trying to hold off Ryan Doucette, who of course is no stranger to North Wilkesboro. More often I see him out there in a modified, but now in that 77 machine trying to get to the back bumper of the 22. Brent Pankari back there. Evan Rice, you talk about a driver that's got pressure coming into these races. Well, right now, based off of the current playoff standings, Evan Rice sits on the bubble spot, 16th in the points of drivers that have either won their way into the playoffs or currently sit there pointing their way into the playoffs. So obviously a lot of pressure on this guy coming into this, and I would love to be a fly on the wall of that pit box, find out what their strategy was coming in. Was it go out there, be consistent, or survive here today at North Wilkesboro?
At the moment, it seems like it's they're in attack mode. They've been trying to get positions all throughout the start of the race, and now they've gotten another one up to 12th place. That 98 is on a bit of a tear. He actually made it work on the outside line, which a lot of the speculation at the beginning of the race was the outside line wasn't going to be one of the things that could work tonight, but so far it's proving that it is useful for the right driver. Although now the 32 of Butler says, never mind, I want to use the inside line, I'm trying to force you up to the outside. You can notice in front of them,
Yikes!
Butler sends it into turn 1, made it stick, sideways going through it, but now alongside of the 98, that could be a battle for a position that wins by the 32. If he can get it clear, he does.
There's not much in it, but Sean Butler, I believe, has about 5 lap pressure tires than everybody else. He came to pit road under the first caution back on lap 5. And so there's a little bit maybe advantage of grip, although as you mentioned, he was slideways going into turn 1, so maybe it was just to get a little bit of damage repair done. Remember, he made contact earlier on in this race with Nathan Rabideau, so I don't know if they took on tires necessarily or not, but he's been able to work his way back up at least into the 11th position, trying to crack back up into the top 10. That's something we haven't talked about yet today, Anthony. You talked about, the slick track conditions with the heat out on the racetrack. We saw there on our weather facts that we're dealing with about 100 degrees track temperature. As this race progresses on, and as we start to see more cautions nearing the halfway point, that's when we're going to start to see the varying tire strategies, and we talked about that a lot a couple of weeks ago at Nashville as well.
Yeah, and the different tire strategies that happened at Nashville, they were all over the place. People were taking 2 tires, people were taking 4 tires. So some people took no tires. What surprised?
Jake Poulin. Jake Poulin has run into trouble back there. I believe that's over in turn 1. Well, entering into turn 1, just at the latter half of the front straightaway.
Yeah, that might have slid down the front straightaway. I think that we might have made contact and got spun to the inside of the racetrack. There's still wrecking is the 00. I don't think that there's something on that car that's broken at the moment. Not really having the best way getting out of the front straightaway.
Might have possibly been down in first gear, tried to get back to the throttle, and might have had some wheel spin there. Now, the wreck took place, and he got it recovered before race leader Jonathan Oates came into the vicinity. So I think Jake Poulin will stay on the lead lap. We'll check and see. Oh, we had some contact with second in the points, Andrew Schwartz, out of turn 4.
He did, and something else that happened out of turn 4 is Poulin maybe got a little too much power down, a little bit overzealous. He ended up spinning the tires coming out of turn 4. The wall was enough to stop him from going all the way around, but then, if there's a car to your inside and you make contact with him, that's not going to end very well for any of the parties involved, and he's the one that gets spun around, does Poulin.
On board here with Jake Poulin, and watch here as he tries to gather this thing up as the rear end's coming around. Look at the hands, back, forth, wheeling that thing, trying to keep it pointed in the right direction, but unfortunately, usually at a short track, there's little room for error, because while you're trying to gather up your race car, you got anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6 drivers breathing down your neck wanting that position, and there's not a whole lot of space here at North Wilkesboro.
Yeah, the space you mentioned, well, you hit the nail on the head. The space at this racetrack is extremely limited, and given the fact that it's one of the older circuits that these drivers are going to visit on the season, it's a bit dated in its layout. You got guardrails, you've got concrete barriers, you've got a track surface that's a bit worn, you've got turns that will widen and then thin on the straightaways. You've got the back straightaway, which has grass, no runoff. It's just you've got a wall and then you've got grass. You've got a wide turn 1 with the pit exit, but then it narrows down into a nice swoop out to the back straightaway. If you're not used to taking on a track like this, it can be a bit overwhelming for some of these drivers. Now, most of these drivers have taken on to North Wilkesboro before, so nothing new for these guys in this series. However, it can be a bit of a shock if you're not used to having the situation, or having this kind of a track in your repertoire of knowing how to get around.
We talk about the limited space and the fact that you don't really have any safer barriers to help save you if you run into an issue. With that being said, we do have 2 drivers that are out of the race. Mark Kissenweather actually only ran the first 3 laps and then brought his machine to the garage, so he'll finish 32nd. And Umar Diallo, who we saw involved in that incident back on lap 20, he has gone to the garage area as well. He will finish in 31st. We're going to have 30 drivers still running, 28 on the lead lap as we saw Poulin go around and get his lap back. Jonathan Oates going to lead us back to the green flag with Jordan Worth to his outside. Green flag flies once again, and once again, Jonathan Oates leaves everybody in the dust.
Jonathan Oates has been able to get these restarts down packed Almost got a bit of the grass going through turn 2. Didn't clip it. He was awful close to having what happened earlier in the race happen to him. But check out Nathan Rabideau is able to recover from that contact, is able to get to third place. That car is going the right direction. Somebody else that almost got facing the wrong direction, however, was Isaac Johnson, as he almost made contact with Hagenstein, who was outside. The two continue to battle going through turn 3. Here comes the 32 of Butler. Remember, we saw him tearing through the field earlier. He's made his way up into 7th place, now trying to go for 5th place very quickly as he's gotten to get into the side-by-side battle. And 2 does Andrew Schwartz, who was part of our last full course, is now run up and now battling for a 7th place position.
All this battling in the latter half of the top 10. We ended up having, with the timing of that caution, Anthony, some drivers like to come down and take on some fresh tires, including Ryan Araki, Davey Davis, Ryan Doucette, Evan Rice, Justin Malello. These are guys that we saw running inside the top 10, top 15. We're 3 wide back there around Waterworth. He's going to split Rudy Valentine in the middle. Davey Davis on the bottom. This is where it's getting hairy because it's the old tires versus the fresh tires, and there's contact on the front straightaway. They managed to keep it together into turn 1.
Oh, he's gathered it up, he has, but he's just trying to get around the turn. We got a car spinning in front that wasn't even involved with any of that. To the inside of the racetrack, I believe that was, who was that?
Davis, I believe, or no, actually, correction, that might have actually been,
it was Davis.
It was Davis.
And so Davis goes spinning to the inside of the racetrack. He got off onto the grass. No full course for this one. He's gotten back going around. So we continue to run. That battle for the mid-pack is still heated up, even though that I don't even think that was involved in anything. I think he just spun it on his own.
I think you're right. I think that he might have looped it around. Remember, he took that really shallow entry into turns 1 and 2, so that might have had something to do with it. Might have possibly clipped the grass, as there's really no runoff here. No barrier between the pavement and the grass where it begins and where one surface begins and one surface ends. Looks like for the brief moment, everything's going to settle out back to double wide around the 15th position. So we'll move a little bit further up towards the front. That's where we find Sean Butler taking the fight to Tristan Hagenstein for 5th. You know, obviously, Anthony, we've got the Grand National Series here for FTF presented by Barr Visuals. We've got the Cup Series that runs here for FTF as well. A number of drivers that we saw back in last season's Grand National moving up to the Cup Series. But ironically enough, I looked back at last year's North Wilkesboro race. Only one driver that finished in the top 10 in last year's race is in the field here tonight, and he just moved into P5.
Sean Butler, his stats in the Grand National Series are quite stellar. And now he's trying to make another run at a win here tonight. He's got a car to do it. I was surprised with how well he was able to cut through the field earlier on. Again, he did pit early. Not sure if he did take on tires or not. Was never able to get the data on that. But what we do know is that whether or not he did take fresh tires or not, he's got a lightning bolt of a car. If he can put together a good run and he can possibly get this top 5, if there was not contact between Hagenstein, that almost sends it to the inside. But he could potentially get this top 5, maybe even a win at the rate he's running. Although we got some drivers behind that would certainly
got a caution. Andy Margot in trouble. I believe that's Brent Pancari as well. That's over in the middle of 3 and 4.
And that might be Margot's day done. A plume of smoke coming out of the 48 as he gets onto pit road. Have to see if that ends his day, and I believe it probably most likely will.
Started this race pretty much towards the rear of the field in the 31st position. Was trying to work his way up into the top 25, and we'll see if this started with him or if he was an innocent victim, because as we keep talking about, not a lot of room to maneuver, and yeah, it looks like they actually did start with the 48 over into turn 3.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he ended up hitting the part of the track that bounced his car up. I think there was a little bit where you can see there's a bit of a curve when you go through turn 3 down on the apron. I think he got a piece of that and sent his car up into the air and just came to a dead stop when he hit the wall. That was a violent one on the part of the 48.
Let's go on board with Margot and take a look at that curbing that you're talking about down there into turn 3. Just runs it a little bit low, and if we kind of look there from the front end, it almost looked like he didn't necessarily have a choice of how low that car turned down. It looked like he got a little loose going into that corner, and the nose just pointed in the wrong direction.
he was certainly battling a lot of oversteer going into turn 3, and that's kind of been the tale of the night. Is we've seen a couple of drivers have issues like that when they go in carrying a bit too much speed, maybe turning the wheel a little bit too much, and ends up losing it. Now, I did not know that the curb was on that inside. I thought that there was just a painted white line throughout the entire racetrack. That is a bit surprising to me, and that kind of alludes to, or kind of adds on to the previous statement of got to know the track to know the track.
Definitely, and obviously that's something that these drivers are going to have to be aware of in the closing stages, because while you might actually think about making a move on somebody for the win, putting those left sides maybe down into the grass, you got to be aware the curbing is there to get you, as we've had a lot of strategy take place here under this caution, Anthony. Jonathan Oates, Jordan Worth, Nathan Rabideau, Cosmo Shinoshu, Sean Butler, those were our top 5 when that caution flew. They've come down pit lane. A number of other drivers, though, are electing to stay out, drivers that had been to pit road about 20 laps ago. So the race lead gets turned over to Matthew Zwack. Seth Noel's going to line up in second. Ryan Araki, Ryan Doucette, Evan Rice will be the top 5. And they'll be followed by Dalton Cowden, Justin Malello, Kyle Lawrence Short, and Davey Davis. That's going to be your top 9, with Jonathan Oates coming up in the 10th position. So this is the point of the race we were talking about, where we're going to start to see the varying tire strategies. Remember when we had the varying tire strategies back in that last restart? We saw them 3 wide, so expect a lot more of that here on this next run.
And not only that, but you've got Jonathan Oates back in 10th, who's had rockets of restarts ever since the drop of the green flag. So having him back behind some of these drivers that don't have fresh tires, it's going to be fun to watch him get through the field. It's also going to be fun to watch all those other drivers that were with him, such as Iniishu, Rabideau, Butler, Hagenstein. They got to work their way through the field. This time around, though, Zwack gets a good restart to the inside, although not as good as I would have thought he would have, because now here comes Noel trying to battle as they're 3 wide back in the midfield, but they settled it out to 2 wide racing. Doucette and Naraki now 3 wide for second.
Look at Doucette, high, wide, and handsome through 3 and 4, and look at the run he gets down the front straightaway as a result. Oh, contact! Seth Noel around in front of the 77. Caution's gonna fly. Oates able to split the spinning car in the outside wall. One car comes to a stop back there, but I think everyone managed to avoid the spinning 54.
That was like exactly what you said, Seth. 3 wide racing, different tire strategies. Now, what's interesting is there was drivers that were on the same tire strategy.
Caution's going to come out for the 6th time here tonight at North Wilkesboro. We'll go back over to turn 1, but there's a lot of drivers that probably should have gotten some damage in that incident that did not, because that was right up at the very front of the field. A 3 wide battle for the top position.
If you can watch them, the way that Noel gets spun into turn 1, kind of a slow spin, a really lazy spin, if you will, as he goes around and goes to the outside line. Now, thankfully, and here's where the biggest part is, he went to the outside of the racetrack. He did track to the middle part of it as he spun around, but it was just enough time for most of the drivers to get to the inside line and pick a lane before they got into the vicinity of him. So thankfully, we only had one driver really get any damage out of that, if any damage at all, because I don't think there was hardly any contact that sent the 54 around.
This is on board with the points leader, Jonathan Oates. Look at this. There's barely enough room for a car to be able to fit through there, but he was able to slip his way past the spinning Seth Noel on the inside line. You saw the 45 of Rudy Valentine. He came to a dead stop just before he made contact with the 54. So a solo car spin up in the 2nd position at the time brings out the caution for the 6th time here tonight. Interesting that those drivers that elected to stay out under the last caution, they're going to stay out here again. So obviously, drivers have target laps when they come into these short track races. I would hazard a guess that this is not the last time we're going to see guys like Zwack, Naraki, and Rice on pit road, but I'm very curious as to what they're looking at for the target lap to maybe make that final stop and come down, maybe get their final set of tires for the day.
Well, we're approaching halfway through the race soon, and with how early these drivers pitted, if they can go the full distance with when they pitted, then that would imply that the rest of the field that came down a few laps ago are more than capable of making it to the end of the race. So are you willing to sacrifice tires in order to have track position? And a place like this, where passing can be difficult, especially if we just saw where they were trying to go 3 wide into turn 1, it didn't quite work out. So do you stay out for the rest of the time is the question. And I guess the answer to that would be throw hazard to it and see what happens. It worked for some guys in Nashville. Maybe the thinking is it'll work here. Very similar track layouts. Not as much banking here as there was in Nashville, but at the same time, if you brought your Nashville car to this track, then you might already know what you can do. So go at it. Zwack, Naraki, Doucette, these guys, they might know something that we don't know. It's going to be fun to watch them try to get through the field and try to get through the rest of the race, maybe potentially on that one stop, green flag back in the air. And I don't think that Zwack had any intention on sticking around because he's trying to get away, although Naraki's saying otherwise.
About the best timed restart we've seen from a second-place driver all night. Naraki was alongside the passenger side door of Zwack into turn 1. Now going to try and get the power down there on the top side out of 4. Not going to be able to do it. Ryan Doucette looking to slip by for the runner-up spot. And there's Jonathan Oates on those fresh tires. He's up to 4th. He's now looking to maybe get up to 2nd place here in the next couple laps. He got contact back there. Somebody is spinning around possibly on the back straightaway, and indeed they are. That's Kazuma Shinoshu. I couldn't tell who it was he made contact with. It was a gold car back there, but it does bring out the 7th caution of the day.
Shinoshu goes around, and the gold car that was part 2 of the calamity was Kyle Lawrence Short. I believe that it was actually Short that got loose going through turn 2, and Shinoshu was just an innocent bystander in all of this.
Caution's going to fly for the 7th time here today. This will put Seth Noel back on the lead lap. The 54 lost a lap after the previous caution, so 27 drivers will be on the lead lap when we go back green. Let's go back and see what happened. It almost looked like they might have been 4 wide off of turn 2 there, Anthony.
They were getting close to it. They certainly were 3 wide, and if Ishinoshu had gotten to the inside line, it would have been 4 wide, and I think that's what have happened is I look back and look at it a second time, and I think Ishinoshu was the one that had the initial contact onto Short.
Saw it there as Kazuma Shinoshu gets some pretty good contact with the right front of his machine into that steel guardrail. Actually, correction, that was the left front. It looks like he got on the brakes somewhat early enough. Doesn't look like a whole lot of damage on that machine. Could have obviously been a lot worse as we go on board with him here. But nonetheless, still going to be some damage he's going to have to deal with. And while we've always stated that you don't have to have the prettiest car to win the race, we have been told by drivers that even minute damage like that will affect the way that the race car handles for the remainder of the event.
Certainly, if the way the car handles isn't any different, psychologically it'll make you handle different, if that's a way that we can put it, because now you've got this mentality that there might be something wrong with the car, but even though there might not be, but that might cause some damage. Ishinoshu's front end might have, it certainly could have been a tire rub. The inside of the car might, the suspension might be a little bit bent, where going through these turns you'll have to hold on to it a little bit more than you would normally have to. But the physical side of that and the mental side of that is certainly there. It changes the way you drive, even though that there isn't anything internally wrong with the car. Psychologically, you think there is, so it changes your driving habits.
Folks, you're watching race number 20 of the FTF Grand National Series, presented by Barr Visuals. I'm Seth Cole, he's Anthony McCurry, and we're racing here at North Wilkesboro for the Motorsports Drop 150K. Matthew Zwack's your race leader. Just a little bit of a mid-race update here. We currently have 27 cars on the lead lap, with Seth Noel getting the free pass under this caution. 4 drivers officially out of the race: Corey Suma, Brett Bankari, Umar Diallo, and Mark Kissenweather. Andy Margot still sits on pit road getting damage repaired to his machine, right now scored in the 29th position. And so far here tonight, we have had 7 cautions for 35 laps. Only 1 lead change. That's because Matthew Zwack took the race lead away from Jonathan Oates on pit strategy, and he leads us to green.
And he got another good restart, although this time around the outside, Doucette wasn't waiting, trying to make the outside line work on the restart, and I think he's going to have the momentum coming off of 2 into 3, still on the outside line, not going to the inside yet. Does Zwack have the power out? Certainly does. Drag race down the start-finish line, and I think that Zwack might have gotten it at the line, but Doucette now challenging on the outside line yet again.
Zwack took maybe the shallowest entry into turn 1 on that initial restart lap that I've seen any driver take today, and then Ryan Doucette followed up running the highest I think I've seen anybody go through 3 and 4 in the following couple of corners. Jonathan Oates, though, he takes a peek for 3 wide, now tucks in line again behind the side-by-side battle for the race lead.
Going to the outside is the 73, trying to find some momentum up there. Certainly working for Doucette as he now takes the lead on the outside line, running right against the wall. Now falls to the inside line, and Zwack trying to hold off the points leader now as we come through to complete lap 74. Now on to lap 75. Jordan Worth now battling side by side with Ryan Naraki. These two are a couple of the drivers that stayed out the last time by. Certainly Naraki is trying to get back up. He was in 3rd place at one point, has fallen back to 5th and continuing to lose positions, as now here comes Sean Butler, who is on a different tire strategy, trying to get through the field.
Andrew Schwartz we saw back there in the 67. He's on fresher tires than some of the drivers ahead of him. Last time out at Nashville, did not get the finish he was looking for, lost the points lead and comes into this race 14 points back in the 2nd position, as it looks like Sean Butler is going to complete the pass around Naraki for the 5th spot. Ryan Doucette, even though he took the race lead and has cleared the 18, he continues to run up there on that top side, so apparently he's found something up there that very few other drivers have found. It's not really helping him on corner entry, but man, does he get a run on exit down the straightaway.
Yeah, he's definitely keeping the lead based on the fact that he can get to the get the momentum coming off the turn. Now, he has kind of made me a little nervous a couple of times. I think one, it looked like the back end might have stepped out a little bit, made a little contact with the barrier on the outside, but still electing the outside line as preferred run around. Now Zwack and Oates are battling. Not much of a battle, though, as Zwack loses the position to Oates. Although on the inside, it's hard to tell which lane is the correct one at the moment because they're both working out for each other different times. We could go 3 wide for the lead. We're 3 wide for a moment. Doucette continues to pull away. Now Oates to the inside of the racetrack. Does the new tires beat the old tires? We're about ready to find out, but I expect the answer would be yes.
18 lap difference between the tires on the 73 as opposed to Doucette, who gets the wall there through 3 and 4, and that's going to not only kill his momentum, but going to lose him the race lead. Jonathan Oates back to the point.
That's the dangers of running the outside line. You don't want to run too far up the racetrack. You could have that happen to you. And it doesn't
we got a car in trouble back here. Chris Davis, and there will be a caution. Davis looped it around there in 1 and 2. Down on the inside portion of the racetrack, and the caution will fly for the 8th time here tonight.
There's
another car in trouble. Is that Spencer Ray?
I think that's the 18, yeah.
Spencer Ray goes around there on the back straightaway in the 4 machine, and now he has to, unfortunately, teleport that car to pit road. Spencer Ray was involved in a couple of early yellow flags, had managed to get himself back on the lead lap, was up inside of the top 20, and look at this. Now we got pretty much most of those drivers that came down pit road about 45 laps ago. They're back on pit road here again. I would hazard a guess possibly for their final time here today, but then again, we just don't know what strategies these drivers have in store.
It's a bit of a mixed bag right now. We've seen different types of, and that's the kind of cool thing about it, is that a lot of these drivers looked at what happened at Nashville and they're using that same strategy here today. A mixed bag of whether or not you can or cannot make it. On fuel, I think most of the drivers can make it to the end of the race with a 1 stop, but the tires, the track temps are certainly playing into how these drivers approach the different tire strategies, and I think that's more or less why we're seeing all these drivers on pit road at different times, because they want to figure out what's the best strategy for me and how am I going to get to the end of the race the fastest. But looks like everyone's getting down off the on the pit road, but this was a compound incident that happened that brought out the yellow flag. Spencer Ray was the second half of it. There was the first half, and I think it initially started as a solo car spin.
It definitely did. You could see that the back end of Chris Davis's car was stepping out even before Rudy Valentin got to his left rear quarter panel and almost collected up the 84 of Kazuma Shinoshu. And then, oh wow, for Spencer Ray, I don't know if he thought he was clear on Jake Poulin or not, but he wasn't, and there's a little bit of an opening there for safety vehicles to be able to get onto the racetrack there on the outside of the back straightaway, and that little bit of an apex there, that almost 45-degree angle of the wall is what the 4 hit.
I was looking at it all night, wondering if anybody was going to make contact with it, and I guess that even the commentator's curse happens telepathically, because then he gets sent into it. Not only did he get sent into it, but he got sent into it off the nose of another driver, which makes it a little bit worse for entry. But man, and that would explain why his day is done. His car was already damaged from earlier on, and that was the nail in the coffin for the 4 machine. And tough break for him. And I agree with you. I don't think that he knew that the 88 was up to the top of the or to make that the 00 was up to the top of the racetrack and just tracked. He had no intention of staying to the inside. Honestly, I do agree. I don't think he knew that he was up there.
Might have been a case there. I'm not exactly certain if at that point the caution had flown. I think it would have, since Davis had already gone around there in 1 and 2. I almost wonder if he thought everybody was going to be slowing up and having to get single file, and maybe he slowed up a little bit sooner than Jake Poulin did. But Poulin and Noah Carmichael got pieces of that incident as well, sustained some damage to the green flag. Back in the air, Jonathan Oates leads us back into turns 1 and 2. Sean Butler going to slot into second, getting around Jordan Worth. Hagenstein and Rapido, they're going to make up the top 5.
And got 6th place Painter now finding his way up into the top 10, trying to get into the top 5 as he's now gotten in front of Zach Hudson, who's now running in the 7th place into the 70 machine. Isaac Johnson, who was running in the top 5 earlier, he's now making his way back up through the field in 8th place. Kazuma Shinoshu in 9th place, trying to make his way back into the top 5 as well. And then Gary Waterworth also, after a bit of an incident earlier in the race, now trying to find his way in the top 10, still pulling it on the outside line. To the inside, it looks like Dalton Cowden's trying to challenge him for the 10th position, as there's almost contact between the two of them.
Most of the drivers up inside the top 7 right now, as we're 3 wide back here. They haven't been to pit road since back on lap 55. Kazuma Shinoshu, he was last on pit road back on lap 70. And that 3 wide, Matthew Zwack on the inside line. Those are the drivers that were just on pit lane under this most recent caution. So a lot of different varying tire strategies up here inside the top 15.
Yeah, indeed there was. And that 3 wide situation, we've seen 3 wide happen a number of times. And that almost had the same thing that happened earlier in the race, but they got it settled out. Contact between Zach and I think that he's leaning on Ishinoshu right now. 3 wide again. There's contact. Ishinoshu in the 2. Trying to go through turn 4. I think that they're going to make it work somehow. Zwack was able to get away with it. Ishinoshu was able to get away with it, but to the outside line. Doesn't look like that. Dalton Cowden is. Who is that again? I can't find him on my thing.
It is Dalton Cowden there in the 117. Oh, we got a spinner! Isaac Johnson! That car just snapped around there out of turn 4. Nobody was around him at the time. A little bit of contact for the 117 as the caution's going to fly for the 9th time.
They were so close to having that happen earlier on, and I'm surprised that it waited this long before it happened. But 3 wide racing, and then just a slow spin on the part of Johnson.
That one took me by surprise for sure, because it just happened in the blink of an eye. I'd love to know what it was that led to that car just snapping around. I don't know if maybe it was trying to get back to the throttle and corner exit or not. It didn't look like anybody was around him at the time. We'll go back and take a more in-depth look here with a replay.
I think we're going to look at
we got a little help.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at the 84 of Ishinoshu for a little help in that one.
Yeah, I got him a couple of times there. And there's what, like a protocol of racing with drivers? 1 bump means, hey, get out of my way. 2nd bump means, hey, next time you're going around. So I think Cosman skipped a step right there, but nonetheless, the 52, or in this case, the 2 of Isaac Johnson going around, bringing out this caution. Now, again, the good news, and there's been quite a bit of good news for drivers here tonight with the incidents, is the fact that I don't think a whole lot of damage was sustained by Johnson. He managed to stay on the lead lap as well, and one of the things we talked about coming in tonight was the limitation of space available to these drivers to avoid a wreck, but for the most part, with the number of cautions we've had and the number of spinning machines we've had, drivers have done a heck of a job making sure that it's minute contact.
Yeah, indeed, and they have also been able to really figure out how to make the track as thin as it is wide as possible. A lot of these could have been multi-car incidences, and thankfully, even with that one, it didn't turn out to be as bad as it could have been. Now, something that is a bit surprising to me is that Kazuma Nishinoshu was the one that spent the most time on pit road under that last time around. That earlier damage that he accumulated might have gotten worse by that contact. As small as it was, it might have knocked something loose. He's now going to restart in 21st, a long ways back from where he was running. So whether or not it was a penalty that he had to serve, or if it was any other outside interference, I'm not sure why he had to spend that much time on pit road, but he's now back in 20th at running at the moment.
Obviously, as we get closer and closer to the playoffs with 8 races remaining in the regular season, we will be highlighting even more drivers that are down around that cut line area in the playoff standings. But a couple of drivers that are not in the field here tonight: Ethan Corder, who is 6th in the overall standings, Nate Stewart, who is 5th in the points, as well as Lucas Palesel, 9th in points. They were not in the field here tonight. And Brent Pancari, who came into this race 12th in the overall points, so right down there around that cutoff line area, he's out of the race in 30th position. So while at the moment they aren't necessarily major storylines, by the time we end up getting to that regular season finale, they could be huge in terms of who those drivers are going to be competing for the championship.
Indeed, and getting close to a cut, the drama intenses as well as you get close to a championship cutoff point, and we got a lot of tracks coming up that drama could be fueled even more, but we're about ready to set them up to go green flag in this race. Jonathan Oates back where he started, first place, green flag back in the air, another great restart, although this time Worth kind of stayed with him. Not one of the restarts that we've seen earlier with Oates, as he kind of got caught a little bit sleeping himself.
And they're going to be 3 wide back there. The fresh tires of Matthew Zwack tried to go to the top side 3 wide. Now he'll be alongside of Dalton Cowden. That is for 7th place. Up ahead of them, Nathan Rabideau. He won 2nd place, and he's going to possibly take it down here into turn 1. Worth going to battle on the top side, though. Sean Butler looking on in the 32.
And then got Jack Painter behind, looking out from the outside, looking in. He's got a side-by-side battle himself with the 70 of Zach Hudson to the inside. Here comes Matthew Zwack again. We saw him go 3 wide earlier in the race. He's going to stick it into turn 1. A little bit backs out of it. He's got a hooked-up car, though. I'm surprised he's able to pull off these daring moves late in the race. The tires are fresher, but I didn't think they'd be that much fresher and able to pull off those moves without having the car snap around on him.
He paid for the shallow entry, was not able to get to the inside of either Hudson or Painter. Now he'll go to work to the inside of Ryan Doucette. Actually, correction, that's Ryan Doucette working to his outside. The fresh tires on the 77, we saw him using that 3rd lane. Nobody else runs up there, so it's all clean racetrack for Doucette in that 3rd line.
It does indeed. Behind him, you've got Cowden, Rice, and Davis stacking up 4 wide for a moment as they all try to figure out their way around. You got Watersworth, Hagenstein all in the mix here. Still banging doors off of each other going into turn 1. Can they hold on to it? I think they're going to be able to do it just barely. But that could have been another multi-car incident. We get away with it, though, as Oates continues to lead. Rabideau to 2nd now, but they continue to go 2 and 3 wide, sometimes even 4 wide in the mid-pack.
I will guarantee you that 4 wide that then transitioned to 3 wide, while it settled itself out, I guarantee you, nobody did the gentlemanly thing and backed out of it. They all basically just kind of kept their foot in it and let the chips fall where they may. Fortunately, they all were able to get through unscathed as we got a car way up the track back there. I think that might have possibly been the 12 of Gary Waterworth, and the caution is now going to come out. Rudy Valentine has gotten into an issue over in the entrance of turn 3.
And he finds himself facing the wrong direction on the inside line. Make that the grass. Got back going. I would dare say that this is probably another one of those single cars that kind of happened on the exit of turn 2 and now found his way to the entrance of turn 3. Have to quickly go back and see what happened here. And
Almost kind of like deja vu with what happened to Cosmin Shinoshu. He was the car on the inside of a four-wide situation coming off the second corner.
Indeed, he was. That was a lot of traffic that he had to get through and had to navigate. He actually ducked down to the grass at one point in order to try and avoid it, but not enough as he got contact with a driver pretty higher up in the standings. So that strategy that we saw earlier of him starting at the back, I don't think it's paying off at the moment, but another solo car spin to bring us under yellow again.
Rudy Valentine, of course, survived the chaos of Monza to pick up his first win on the season. He currently finds himself 34th in the point stands, has only made 4 starts on the season. I'm not necessarily certain what the requirement of starts is for a driver that's already won a race to be able to make it into the playoffs. Obviously, including tonight, there's still 8 more starts that he can make. But he's a driver that could very well, depending on if he can get over that starts threshold, could be winning his way into the playoffs. But we talk about drivers wanting to have good momentum going into the playoffs as well. So obviously Rudy Valentine trying to find victory lane maybe another time or a couple times before the regular season comes to a close. But he seemed to struggle here at these short tracks. He struggled last week, and here tonight in the 45 car, has run into some problems, bringing out the 10th caution of the evening. And again, we've had drivers roll the dice, come down pit road for, I guess we could maybe say now for them, their final pit stop of the day, as we're going to be getting the restart with less than 40 to go. Ryan Doucette, Sean Butler, Nathan Rabideau, Jason Worth, Ryan Naraki, also Jack Painter, Ethan Matthews, Zach Hudson, all these guys. These are a lot of guys we were talking about up inside the top 10 even, a few inside the top 5. They're down pit lane, and now they've got those fresh tires for the remainder of this race.
It certainly paid off for Jonathan Oates, Tristan Hagenstein, Davey Davis, some of these drivers within the top 5. Andrew Schwartz, it paid off for them coming down to get fresh tires and then carving their way through the field. So expect to see those drivers do the same thing late in the run, as Oates again chooses the inside line, as Hagenstein will line up to his outside. Seth mentioned it earlier, but getting into the later half of the season, almost to the cut line, we got quite the series of tracks coming up for these drivers to have to deal with it. Tonight we're at North Wilkesboro. Rockingham will be next week, and then we have the Tsukuba Nationals, Mount Panorama. Now that is going to be one of the biggest wild cards. Going to Australia to race at the Mount Panorama circuit in Bathurst, that could be pretty intense. These cars are pretty similar to the V8 supercars that run in Australia. Certainly not GT3 level, but we're going to see them up the mountain, and that could be one of the things that really shakes up the point standings as we're back under green, and Oates, again, got a whale of a restart.
He did indeed, but Tristan Hagenstein going to keep him honest, and immediately the caution comes out. Robert Dorman has had a problem over in turn 3, so as soon as the green flag comes out, the yellow flag flies once more. Caution number 11 will go up on the board, and we'll re-rack them and do it all over again.
I want to bet that this one was netcode. I'm just taking a look at it, and I don't think there was ever contact between those drivers. At least on my screen there wasn't.
That's the 92 of Jordan Worth. Oh, and then there's Rabideau in the 93, and yeah, as our broadcast colleague Scott Rankin would call it, gap whack took place right there between those two machines, and Robert Dorman, unfortunately, was on the receiving end of it. So caution's going to fly for the 11th time here tonight. The lucky dog, I believe, will go to Seth Noel, who is right now 3 laps down. The last car actually out on the racetrack running, and the only car that is currently off the lead lap. Actually, correction, as soon as I say that, Andy Margot has returned back to the racetrack, albeit 32 laps down. So 27 drivers are still running in this race, and there will be 25 when we go back green. Gives us an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about what you were mentioning with the upcoming races. You talk about the Tsukuba Nationals, and you talk about Bathurst. I mean, Bathurst, they don't even have a set lap limit for that race. It's a timed race. And so, these drivers here tonight, they're strategizing when to come down and take tires because they know the target lap is the checkered flag at 150. You've got 2 hours that you have to plan for at Bathurst, and you know all about strategizing for those timed races. It's an entirely different art than what these drivers have been used to most of this season.
Absolutely. What is good about them is that you do have when the time starts running down, it never stops. Not for anything, not red flags, nothing. So you do have that sense of constance, or that constant ticking down, that you know that the race will end this time, and it's not going to be any sooner, any later. With lap races, it's how fast the drivers can get around the circuit to complete the set distance. For timed races, you kind of have that little extra security, knowing that you know what your car can do, and you know that the race will only be this long. So it really plays into some strategies. You can try to throw some different things at it that you didn't necessarily would work if you were doing a lap-based race or a distance-based race. So it's going to be fun to watch these drivers do it. I know that the V8 supercars, when they race the Bathurst 1000, that one is not necessarily a timed race. That one's a distance race, but it's a 1000K race. But the 12 hours at Bathurst, again, that is one of the timed races, and that has played some major strategies that done with GT3 and GT4 cars. Get to see some stock cars, some American stock cars run at the Bathurst, the Mount Panorama circuit, so that would be fun. And then, oh yeah, by the way, immediately after that, you've got the Indianapolis Road Course, Michigan, Richmond, and Darlington. And you got Daytona. So definitely a big bag of races that we're going to have to deal with coming up. And if you want to get into the championship, you got to figure out how to run all of them. Green flag back in the air. Jonathan Oates, again, wicked restart.
Yeah, he's going to try and hold off Tristan Hagenstein. He'll clear him for the spot. Apparently Jonathan Oates is of the mentality track position over tires, because he hasn't been to pit road since back on lap 55. He had a little contact there, though, with Tristan Hagenstein, who's got about 40 lap fresher tires than the 73.
And now it's still battling back there between Nishinoshu at the outside line. It looked like he was getting a little bit too. Oh, we got big cracks in the back.
Huge wreck. The 32 of Sean Butler was right in the middle of it. I was going to mention he was the highest inside the top 10 on the freshest tires. Well, that's a moot point now, as he has to get the thing refired, leaving the turn 2 vicinity.
And that is extremely, it's salt in the wound. That driver was one of the best drivers in the field all throughout the first half of the race. Late in the second half is when we see him go unceremoniously the wrong direction, and I think that we were talking about how the track is narrow. I think that came to bite him going down turn 1.
This was 3 wide in the middle with Doucette on the inside, Worth on the outside, and looks like the 32 just stepped out from underneath him there. He tried to gather it up, couldn't do it. Isaac Johnson in the 52 got him as well. And mention the fact that Sean Butler is the only Grand National Series driver here this season that had previously been in the race 8 months ago here at North Wilkesboro last season. He finished 4th here in that race, but obviously here, closing on 30 laps to go, things did not go the way he was hoping for.
No, definitely not. He got more contact as the spin continued. He got a little bit from Naraki, and then a little bit more from the 2 machine as well, as he came in and pounded the side of the 32. So that car very poorly in the way of the damage department. Again, being at a road course might not matter too much, but definitely want to get a looked at just in case something more sinister is happening underneath the hood or with the suspension or what have you.
I'm not 100% certain what he was feeling in the race car, but when we took that on board with him, you saw the hands turning to the right. The counter steering began even before he got to the corner. So it's almost as if he was expecting in the middle of 3 wide for that car to snap around on him, and he was trying to preemptively make sure that it didn't. So obviously he felt something was wrong being in that 3 wide situation, and unfortunately for him, his assumption was correct. It's going to drop him back to the tail end of the field. And you know, again, let's highlight the fact that he's a driver that came into this race without a win, but up there inside the top 5 in the point standings, 4th in the overall points. A lot of these drivers here are going to be locking themselves up playoff spots as we get closer and closer to the first playoff race at Daytona. But there are so many guys that we've seen here, even in just the first 2 weeks that we started broadcasting this season, that have shown that they've got the consistency to put themselves in victory lane. They just haven't been able to do it yet.
Yeah, and we're running out of opportunities in order to do it before the regular season's up. But like you said, it doesn't really matter if there's not that many people who have won a race. You can get into the championship without ever having to win a race. and that kind of attests to the consistency that we have. We always talk about how winning races is important, and trust me, they are important. But if you win a race, get into a playoff position, but then have a terrible regular season, then you don't really have that consistency that you can bounce to in order to really establish yourself within the championship. It's like winning a Daytona and then finishing outside the top 10 for the remainder of the season. You don't have that consistency, that extra weight going into a championship. So these drivers, no wins under their belts, still with the consistent driving, can get in. Green flag back in the air. Jonathan Oates will take a commanding lead yet again. And I wanted to touch on it again. Before the playoff system, you could win a championship without winning a single race in a season.
You know, I've always heard it said, and I've seen more and more where it's true. Wins will get you into the current playoff system, but consistency wins championships. We're 3 wide back here around the 9th position. Kyle Lawrence short, way up on the top. Chris Davis.
Davies around.
And it's right in front of the field. Everyone avoids him as he keeps it down in the grass. Now the caution's going to fly, as I think another driver may have slid in. Robert Dorman in the 46, I think, might have entered into that vicinity.
Yeah, he's gotten spun around, does Dorman, so too does Davis. Off the nose of, I couldn't quite tell which driver he went off the nose of, but he certainly did have a little help in this one.
Take a look and see where it was. This was up around 7th place battle, and I think it might have possibly been the 98, the orange machine of Evan Rice, who was to his outside. Let's see if indeed that was the case. Oh, well, actually, no, it was Cosmin Shinoshu, but to be fair to Cosmin, that 305 was already out of shape before he got to him.
Certainly was in the process of spinning around, and then went completely around to the inside of the racetrack, did make contact with the guardrail, and then on the outside line, another driver comes barreling in and also gets spun around, that being the 46 of Dorman.
Such a rock and a hard place, too. I mean, right on board with Cosmin Shinoshu, the instinct is to lift, to allow that driver the opportunity to gather it up, or at least make sure they fully spin out before you get to them to avoid making contact with your machine. But at a short track, you've got somebody else up your gearbox, so you can only lift so much and hope that the information that you're lifting is going to be relayed quickly enough to that guy behind you so you don't get run over.
Now, no brake lights on these cars. If there was, that'd be a little easier to let the guy behind you know that, I gotta slow down, but it's certainly a bit of a rock and a hard place, and it also upsets the balance of the car when you have to let off mid-corner. Not so much at a short track such as this one where you're running at low enough speeds, it wouldn't really upset the aero too much, but if you get to a faster track, then you also run that risk. But we are, again, under pacing. It is lap 129 of 150, about ready to cross into 130, meaning we'll have 21 laps to go. And Seth, it's been kind of what we expected out of North Wilkesboro. A lot of tempers flaring. The thin racetrack is causing a lot of problems when they go 2 and 3 wide. We've seen some 3 wide work, and still through all of it, Jonathan Oates continues to lead. Now the question is, can they make it on what they've got? Do they want to come down and get more tires? Do they sacrifice track position to get faster tires, or do they keep running the way they are? Because if the cautions keep coming out like this due to battling in the mid pack, you might be able to skirt away with a win without having to do much of anything.
Well, if Nashville's anything to go by, I think that basically your top 10, top 15, they've made their bed. They've made their final pit stop. They are going to run it out to the finish. Some of those guys back there outside the top 15, with the fact that we've got only 26 drivers on the lead lap, they may elect to come down, take on some fresh rubber, and try and improve where they would have finished should they have stayed out. I think these guys up here at the front, I think they're basically going to stay where they are at until we receive that checkered flag. And how about Jonathan Oates? The fact that he's been able to keep these guys in his rearview mirror on these last couple of restarts, he is about to turn his 77th circuit on these Goodyear tires. Tristan Hagenstein, to his inside, he's only turning his 35th. So there's a huge difference between the grip the 73 feels into the corner as opposed to the rest of the field behind him. And he's going to clear Tristan Hagenstein down to turn 1 once again.
And almost, just barely, if not razor's edge clear, the 27 going into turn 1. That was extremely close. Hagenstein now trying to battle back. Now battling behind them, Andrew Schwartz, who started in the back of the field, has made his way to the front of the field, now battling for the 3rd place position with Evan Rice. And behind him, you've got Zwack and Shinoshu battling for what is a 4th place position. We'll make that a 5th place position. throw the 92 of Jordan Worth into the mix as he's now trying to battle as well and getting a bit sideways coming out of turn 4.
Also, Evan Rice got a little loose there coming out of 4 as well on the top side. Andrew Schwartz in the 62. This strategy that he usually does, the start, the back, work his way to the front, it's working this week. It didn't work a couple of weeks ago at Nashville as he finished back in the outside the top 20. Here today, though, started 26, has worked his way up to 3rd. Another driver, though, is still chasing his first win as the caution is out. Robert Dorman in the 46 has looped it around again, this time over in the middle of 3 and 4. 14th caution of the day, closing in on 15 laps to go.
And Ryan Nowacki also with a bit of a half spin going into turn 1 after the yellow came out. He got back going the right direction and doesn't look like there's any damage on the 0-2 out of that one.
Take a look and see what happened here. This was actually towards the rear of the field as well. A lot of drivers that have been involved with multiple incidents here today. Car behind Dorman, I believe, is the 305 of A.B. Davis, and, well, like that 46 just lost grip, lost rear grip going into 3. Noah Carmichael was behind him, but by plenty of space, and so a solo incident once again brings out this, our 14th caution of the night. And do we have anybody ducking on the pit road? A couple of drivers. Evan Rice is on pit lane. Chris Davis is on pit lane. A couple of guys that are giving up some positions.
Yeah, they late in the race, maybe some fresh tires will help them get to the front of the field. They were kind of stuck battling around the 6th, 7th position when that caution came out. I don't necessarily know if this is a good strategy call based on how many laps were left in the race, and they were running up pretty high in the standing or in the field, so I don't know if this is a good call, but we'll have to see. If we'll find out. Maybe their thinking is that the way that they're racing up towards the front of the pack, maybe they'll get a little bit door-to-door racing and potentially spin around or maybe cause some carnage at the front. Not really sure, but I don't know on the part of Rice. He's got some rear end damage. I don't know if he came down because of that or if he came down for another reason.
Well, it looks like, according to our telemetry, it was just a normal 4-tire pit stop for the 98. He'll be lining up, looks like in the 20th position for this upcoming restart, and it will be momentarily here. I believe race leader Jonathan Oates is going to be choosing the lane he wants here this time. Nope, actually, I think we're going to have another lap of pacing here. You know, there was a point in this season where Jonathan Oates only had one top 10 finish in the span of 9 races. A couple of those races were actually outside of the top 20, but if you look back at his last 5 races so far, he has had 4 of those finishes inside of the top 10, 3 of them in the top 5, and coming off his best finish of the season last week at Nashville. Definitely turning up the heat when it matters the most. He's looking for his first win on the season just 1 week after taking the points lead. So if we're talking about a guy that's looking to have some really good momentum heading towards the playoffs, look no further than the 73, who's trying to go coast to coast here tonight at North Wilkesboro.
It doesn't seem like anyone's really had that much of a challenge for him either, even though when he was back in the mid-pack and had to work his way up, he did it relatively flawlessly. And ever since he's gotten back to the lead, still having to look at, ooh.
little message being sent there. Tristan Hagenstein saying, all right, buddy, all right, I've observed you for a couple of restarts here. I'm ready for you.
Well, it's not a little bit of showmanship as well, because remember when Oates on the last restart kind of slid in by the skin of his teeth in front of Hagenstein? That might be a little bit of a, I know, if you try that again, I might not lift this time. So have to see if that plays out. We're about ready to go back under green. Does Oates get the better restart? That was a much better restart than the last one. A commanding lead going into turn 1.
He will clear by at least a car length over Hagenstein, who then looks back and sees a side-by-side battle for 3rd. Matthew Zwack will go around the outside of Andrew Schwartz. Doesn't quite have him cleared. Ooh, Schwartz had to really get on the brakes there through the center of 3 and 4. Zwack's going to take advantage and move into the podium spot.
And now behind them, you got Worth, Ishinoshu, and Doucette.
Oh, nice spinner. Kyle Lawrence short. I saw that going into turn 1. He had somebody right into his rear bumper. It loops him around in the center of 1 and 2. Yellow flag's going to fly for the 15th time as we're at less than 10 to go here at North Wilkesboro.
And this one might have been a case of, yeah, he just got run into by the 78, it looks like, going into turn 1.
Go back and take a look at it here, as kind of saw it just in the back portion of our camera when it was focused on the race leaders, and it's a big stack. There was actually a big gap there too, up to, I believe that was 117 of Cowden. So I'm not necessarily certain if maybe the 51 was holding up some fresher tires behind him, because he had about 47 lap old tires at that point in time. And when we start getting down to the end of the race, if you're slow in front of somebody, that's when the chrome horn gets used.
Especially at a road course, or make that a short track. We're not a road course yet, but yeah, especially at a short track where you're more than willing to use the chrome horn going into any turn, because, well, speeds are low enough. There's really going to be nothing stopping me from doing it, and I'll just screw on by you on the inside line. And unceremoniously dumped to the outside was short, but I mean, that again could have been much worse than it was, and that's kind of what we've been saying all night with these incidences. They could be so much worse. I don't think that if you're watching at home, it's one thing seeing an aerial view of the track, but if you're on the racetrack, this is an extremely thin racetrack, and you have seconds in order to make a decision, sometimes split seconds, in order to really either get to the inside, outside, hit the brakes, go accelerate more. It's really difficult when you are in a position where you have to make these decisions, but I got to give them credit. For the most part of the night, it's been solo car incidences, maybe one or two car. We had one multi-car crash that was more than 5, I believe, but even then it was just mostly people avoiding and self-spinning. So for the most part, even though the track has been thin, we have gotten off pretty well, even though that we have a few spinners, and gotta give these drivers some credit for that.
I mentioned earlier that these drivers, they can kind of do their tire strategy in planning for a 150 lap event. That was not bearing in mind the fact that we do have the possibility of a maximum of 3 overtime green-white checkered attempts. Now, we ended up having 150 laps that we were supposed to run 2 weeks ago at Nashville. We actually ended up running a total of 163 laps. So obviously, that moves the lap threshold of these drivers in terms of strategy up quite a bit. But again, as I mentioned as well, I kind of have the feeling most of these guys up inside the top 10, they're basically out there with what they've got. They're going to run it to the finish regardless of whether the checkered comes out on lap 150 or a little bit past that. But Jonathan Oates, he had the upper hand against Tristan Hagestein on that last restart. Hagestein going to try and match him this time. Keep an eye on a couple of other guys back there, though, that have been up at the front. Matthew Zwack on those fresher tires. He's going to line up on the inside of row 2. And Ryan Doucette in that 77, lingering in the 7th position. I don't think we've seen the last of him, because I think he's going to try and find that third groove ASAP. 4 laps to go, now 3 laps to go here at North Wilkesboro, as Jonathan Oates, again with a great restart into 1.
Gets the entry that he needs into turn 1. Hagenstein behind. Now here comes Zwack to the inside. Can he get clear of Schwartz? Trying to do it. The inside line drives it in deep. He's got Worth coming behind him. Still side by side for 3rd place, but gets cleared just for a moment. Going down the front straightaway. I think that Schwartz is still there as they continue to battle side by side throughout the mid-pack and up through top 10. We got a car sideways. I think he saved it.
Justin Malello in the 53, you're right, he did hang on to that. Tremendous wheelmanship by Malello, as he almost then got run over by Robert Dorman for his troubles. Back up to the front, Zwack trying to clear Andrew Schwartz for 3rd as Jonathan Oates has taken the white flag.
One more
another
lap.
spinner. Sean Butler is around back there, doesn't matter.
Oates coming through turn 3 and 4. Got to the front, went to the middle pack, came back to the front. Will win here at North Wilkesboro, a commanding lead. Throughout the latter half of the race, he gets the best of Hagenstein and Zwack to win here tonight at North Wilkesboro.
Coast to coast pole to win for Jonathan Oates, and it's his first victory in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visuals here in the Motorsports Drop 150K. He was runner-up 2 weeks ago at the short track of Nashville. Tonight, he's going to park that 73 in winner's circle.
Everyone congratulating him on the way by. This is big for him. He's tried so many times, race after race, to get that first win. And now, tonight, not only did he get it, but he did it in a commanding fashion. Got the pole, got the win, and he didn't stay at the front the entire race. He had to fight his way through the field more than one occasion, and he was able to do it. But when he got back to the lead, never looked back. That 73 rock solid all night long.
We're going to be going back, seeing some of those incidents on the final lap momentarily, but we're going to stick it here with Jonathan Oates as he'll come around and get to celebrate on the front straightaway. And while it was already seemed to be a given with his consistency in taking the points lead that Oates would be in the playoffs, pointing his way in, he didn't want to settle for that. He wanted to win his way into the playoffs, and he has done that here tonight, as now he gets to celebrate his first burnouts here in the FTF Grand National Series.
A bit of a stamp of approval on his playoff berth, that is. So, burning it down, understandably so. And again, you go an entire season, you go an entire 2 seasons even, not having a win, and now you get one, and it is special. Points leader going into this race, as you alluded to, that's a big weight off your shoulders, knowing that you're good, you're clear into the playoffs, even if you don't get a win. But as a driver, you know that you want to get that win in order to make it a statement. And now tonight, he is a statement win, or he has made a statement win tonight. And going into the playoffs, be on the lookout for Jonathan Oates. This could be the beginning of the championship run.
Do you want to know just how much of a wheelman he had to be? Jonathan Oates ran the final segment on those set of tires 95 laps. The closest to him were 3 drivers, including the runner-up finisher Tristan Hagenstein. He only had 54 laps on his tires. So in terms of tire grip, Jonathan Oates was behind the 8 ball, but he had the track position and control of those restarts, and that's what was able to help him to pick up this victory, as a la Alan Kulwicki going to do a Polish victory lap here for the fans.
And those restarts, we talked about them earlier in the race. Those were textbook restarts. Got ahead of the driver before turn 1, was able to take the preferred line into the next couple of corners. Taking away the advantage from second place is the hardest thing to do on a restart, especially when they get alongside you. But Jonathan was able to keep it together, was able to clear by a couple of car lengths before even getting into turn 1. So having that ability in order to make it known that you have the position and do it consistently. There was a lot of restarts in this race. I believe a total of 16 restarts that we had to take. When you do that every single time, and he had to do that in the middle of the field at some points as well, so he was able to get through the field, get back to the front, and continue to show the way on the restarts. That is something that you have to have consistency in order to do that. And again, incredible stuff, as I believe he's pushing the 46 back to pit road. I think he might be out of gas or the car cut out.
We're looking here at the replay of what happened on the final lap. Sean Butler, who finished top 5 here 8 months ago in the last North Wilkesboro race. Boy, this track was not kind to him here tonight. He crossed the line in the 24th position. Other couple of drivers that got involved in that, Jonathan Rabideau, looked like the 54 of Seth Noel might have gotten a piece of the incident. Several other drivers got bits and pieces of the wreck there on the back straightaway, but at that point in time, the leader had already taken the white flag. We were racing back to the checkers, so nobody was going to lift. It was basically mash the throttle down at turn 2, close your eyes, and hope that your car found a hole.
Yeah. Last flag, they say that let me restart that sentence. Next flag ends the race, and once you take the white flag, it's all but over. So I don't blame any of the drivers involved in that one, but it is unfortunate that some of these drivers that came in with some high hopes of winning this race or even getting a win tonight ended up facing the wrong direction. And it was kind of like a mini Nashville that we went to tonight. Nashville a bit longer than this racetrack was, I believe, but this track is so much different compared to that circuit. And even though that you can draw comparisons, it's never going to be quite the same. Although I did say that if you brought your Nashville car to this track, you might have a bit of an advantage. And Jonathan Oates certainly had something in his playbook that came from Nashville, was able to do that. But these other drivers that finish in the top 10, you've got Tristan Hagenstein, who battled pretty consistently up through the field and was able to get to second place. Matthew Zwack, I don't think ever left the top 10, was able to get a third place. Jordan Worth, which you saw back around the 15th, 14th position at the start of the race, ends up in fourth place. Andrew Schwartz, that last to first strategy, as it were. I don't think he didn't start last, but he was pretty close to starting last. So the last to first challenge ends up getting him a fifth place position. And then Ryan Doucette, the high line, we didn't think it would work quite well as it did, but skirting around the outside line, able to get sixth.
There's a lot of guys right here on this shot, this screenshot, that here today are certainly looking like they are making clear cases for themselves to be in the playoffs. Jonathan Oates, obviously, with the win, locking himself in, but there's a number of these guys that are up here inside of the top 14, 15, 16 in the standings that are looking to either win or point their way in. Hagenstein, Zwack, Worth just on the outside looking in, but this fourth place could have him up inside the top 16 by the end of this weekend. Andrew Schwartz as well, Cosme Shinozu, Ryan Rocky, and Gary Waterworth. All these guys up inside of the top 10 here tonight, and currently sitting in playoff positions coming into tonight's race. Good run there by Dalton Cowden. I mean, we talk about drivers that ran well both at Nashville 2 weeks ago and here tonight at North Wilkesboro. Well, Dalton Cowden did not run well at Nashville, so a nice solid top 10 run for him. As we look down further through the results, I noticed back there when we took an onboard with Jack Painter, looking at that last lap incident, a driver that stuck around the outside, Evan Rice. Remember you questioned about him coming down, getting those fresh tires, being back in traffic? Well, worked out pretty well for him. He was battling around the 15th, 16th position when he came down pit road, so about a net gain of 3 spots there, getting through the last lap mayhem.
Indeed so. He put Chris Davis and Zach Hudson behind him to get into third place. In front of him, you had Gary Watersworth to round out the top 10, and then Isaac Johnson and Rich Jameson that made up 11th and 12th respectively. And then on through the field, a lot of drivers back here kind of started mid-pack and ended up finishing mid-pack, although some drivers didn't make it to the finish at all, as an early exit from tonight's race it was. Some of those drivers include Spencer Ray, Andy Margot, Davey Davis, I believe, finished the race he actually went out just before the race had ended. It went out on lap 136, and then Rudy Valentine didn't make it to the end at all. He almost did, though. He was just a couple laps from being there. I think he was running, though. He might have been 7 laps down, but still running on the racetrack. Although Corey Summa, Brett Pancari, those drivers, a bit of an early exit tonight.
Well, let's go down trackside and talk with some of our podium finishers here tonight. A driver that came into this race currently 11th in the overall standings, looking to make his way into the playoffs, continues to solidify his case to be battling for the championship in about 8 weeks' time. Let's talk with Matthew Zwack. Hey, Matthew, Anthony, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yep.
All right, man. Well, obviously, we saw that 18 car was really, really fast. We saw you get to the lead based off some pit strategy, but once you had it, you kept them all in your rearview mirror. A little bit off sequence with a number of the other guys up there inside of the top 5. Was there anything that you would have done different strategy-wise, or was that about the best you were able to get with the timing of so many yellows late in this race?
Yeah, I didn't really think I had another choice strategy. I knew in order to beat Oates, I was going to have to be on fresher tires in them, so that's why I came down around lap 105, and I only lost about 1 spot where I would have been for staying out, so I gave it my all there with pit strategy. Don't think I could have done much more.
We saw that the inside line was definitely the preferred way around the racetrack, but the outside and middle groove could work if you got the car to rotate through the turn. Which line did your car feel comfortable in, and did the track conditions really play that big of a factor into how you drove tonight?
I do feel like the bottom was the preferred line. The only time it really hurt is if you threw it in too far, it starts sliding. That's where the middle and the top came in, but yeah, I like the bottom the most, just kind of backing it up in the middle of the corner, then throttling it off. That was probably what I liked best.
One thing that we observed with you, Matthew, was down in turn 1. It seemed like you were able to put that car the lowest of anybody and actually make it stick. What was it you were able to do in approaching turn 1 that allowed you that capability that others weren't seeming to be able to find?
I think the most important thing that came out of that was just straight line braking and not trying to turn the middle of the corner. I was also backing it up going in, so I was able to stick it down there and ride it off turn 2, and it worked pretty well for most of the race because, yeah, like you said, I was able to get under a lot of people.
Well, Matthew, we talked about the fact that you came into this race 11th in the overall standings, in there in the hunt right now for a playoff position. We've definitely seen a lot of consistency out of you in the last couple of weeks. Next week, we go to Rockingham. We got some road course races coming up here down the home stretch of this regular season. What's the confidence level right now?
Road courses aren't exactly my strong suit, but I feel if I can keep it calm, I'll be okay there. And any of the normal ovals, I think I have a good shot at the top 10, so hopefully just keep doing well.
All right, well, Matthew, congratulations on a solid outing here tonight at North Wilkesboro. You got to lead quite a bit of this race as well, bring it home with a solid top 5 outing. We're now going to give the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Got it. I like to thank the Chang Bang boys, part of my team, Lucas Plessel, Ethan Corder, Matt Spalding, Ben Billard, some of those guys. Yeah, that was my teammates. They make these races easier to go through, and just shout out to them. Good teammates.
Matthew Zwack gets his best finish of the season so far, 3rd place here tonight at North Wilkesboro. Once again, congratulations. Best of luck next week at Rockingham.
Thank you.
And he finished 3rd place last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, at Nashville. Follows it up with a 2nd place run here tonight. Let's talk with Tristan Hagenstein. Hey, Tristan, Anthony, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Well, man, I'll bet based off of what we've seen out of you in the last 2 races, you'd love to see short tracks for the remainder of this regular season because, man, you had a 3rd place run 2 weeks ago at Nashville. You bring home 2nd place here tonight at North Wilkesboro. We saw a couple of times you got to the bumper of that 73. Was there ever a time you thought about maybe moving him to be able to put the 27 in victory lane?
Yeah, this is going to be a race that I'm gonna think about for a while. You're always going to want to do something differently, especially when you finish P2. Yeah, I had opportunities to move him out of the way. I had a perfect opportunity to slide it in on him, but I don't know. It is what it is. I can't complain about a P2 though. This is awesome. I told you guys last week I'm good at short tracks, and I'm glad you guys believed me on that. So, I'm happy. I'm very happy. I wish I would have won, but you know what? You can't complain about a P2.
You certainly had a strong car all night long, and there was some gamesmanship late in the run. I saw the little bit of contact under pacing, just letting notes know that you were still on the inside line. And I want to go back to a moment that happened earlier in the race that it got me kind of on the edge of my seat when there was millimeters distance between the back of Oates' car and the front of your car. Late in the race, I believe like around lap 130, lap 132, and he slid down in front of you. Did you have to back out of it, or did you think about just hammering the throttle and trying to go for the lead? Because it certainly could have resulted in contact.
Anytime I got close to his bumper, I was always thinking, all right, I can move him right here, right now, and I wouldn't feel bad about it. But, I think when it came down to it, anytime I got back to the bumper of him and had a chance to move him out of the way, I feel like that's when the caution came out, and it was like, you got to be kidding me right now. I was setting him up the best I could, and then I don't know what happened. Like after a period of time, it just felt like I just kind of used up my stuff, I guess, and he kind of checked out there on the final few restarts, and I didn't really have much for him. But yeah, I could have easily hit him. I like I said, I wish I did, but it's everything happens for a reason, I guess. And I forgot to congratulate him. So congrats to Jonathan Oates, by the way. He put on a clinic there. And but yeah, again, gonna think about this one for a while.
We've seen in the last 2 races now, which is typical at short tracks, different drivers with different varying strategies on when they come down pit road and take on their tires, and usually that leads to some pretty congested moments on the racetrack, as opposed to last time out at Nashville where you had a little bit more grip, the nighttime conditions, cooler track conditions. We were up in the triple digits as far as track temp here in the mid-afternoon here at North Wilkesboro. What was the difference in difficulty in getting through traffic from this race as opposed to back at Nashville?
Yeah, that's a good question. There wasn't really much time when I was in traffic. It felt like we were up front for most of it, or at least in the top 5, 6, 7 or so, and we're just kind of biding our time. But there was a point when we restarted, I guess, 17th or so, and we managed to navigate our way through to about 10th place, I think. And first of all, I got to thank my crew chief, Jake. He was Jake Fisher. He was on the box telling me, all right, you got to get aggressive. You got to start, just start moving people, going places where they wouldn't think you're going. And navigating through traffic here is a lot easier than it was at Nashville. It felt like, because it's more wider in the corners, and if you hit it right, you just get the nice runoff on the bottom, or on the top. That's the nice thing about it. You can make any lane work here, it feels like. But yeah, I mean, had no problem with grip. Had no problem with trying to get through traffic tonight when I needed to. And I don't know. I just I just did what I could.
Well, there's no doubt about it, Tristan. You're definitely projecting in the correct direction in the point standings. Picked up 2 spots after last time out at Nashville. Another 2 spots gained here tonight, up to 5th in the overall standings. So certainly looking like you're making a clear case for yourself to be in the playoffs and hunt for that championship. We wish you luck in that. And heading into these upcoming races, got some tough tracks coming up on the schedule. But for now, we're going to give the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
For sure. First and foremost, again, I want to thank my crew chief / spotter tonight, Jake Fisher, for coming on out. He didn't have to spend his Saturday night spotting me, but he decided to do that, and I really appreciate that. And really good friend of mine for years and years. And again, I'm thankful that he got aggressive with me on the radio when he needed to and tell me what I needed to do. Other than that, I also want to thank the boys at Clout Empire Discord. Again, you know who you are. I want to thank the National Suicide Prevention Hotline for allowing me to run their banner on the car. Other than that, I want to thank everyone else for watching, and as always, I hope you guys enjoyed.
That's Tristan Hagenstein, back-to-back podium finishes in the last 2 weeks, the last 2 races, I should say, here this season. 2nd place here tonight in North Wilkesboro, and he'll look to carry that momentum into Rockingham next week. Congrats, Tristan. Best of luck.
Thank you, guys.
Well, with our top 3 here tonight, Matthew Zwack, Tristan Hagenstein, the driver we're about to talk to, all 3 get their best finishes of the season so far. Let's go down to victory lane as Jonathan Oates is celebrating win number 1 of his FTF Grand National Series career. Hey, Jonathan, Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys. Hello.
Well, man, I could just hear the elation in your voice. We talked to you last week. You felt that you might have just been able to get that win at Nashville and came up just short. How sweet is it to get that redemption, get that win here tonight at North Wilkesboro, and solidify your spot in the playoffs?
Well, it's very, very cool. Last week at Nashville, I definitely think I could have had a shot without that penalty at the beginning, which kind of set me back. So it's great to be able to come back today and get my first win of the series. I think even if I hadn't come close at Nashville, this would still be just as cool because I've been working at winning one of these for a while, and it's cool to finally get it done. 20 races into the season, just to be able to prove to myself, I guess, that I can execute on these things because I've had a lot of good runs this season, but I haven't really been able to execute on them. But today, I guess things just went right, and it's great to finally be an FTF winner, I guess, because I've been working at it for a while.
Welcome to the Winners Club, and you did it in pretty dominating fashion as well. You got the pole earlier in the race, able to kind of command the front of the field for the beginning portion of it, had that tire strategy go back to the midfield, and even still work your way through the field and get back to form as it was in the first half to win the race. Now, the restarts that you had were some of the best restarts that I've seen in a long time in any league. So getting the power down and getting it consistently, that had to have been something you've practiced, surely, but it seemed like your car was hooked up about the same way it was in Nashville. Are there any similarities between this car that you brought here today and the one they had in Nashville?
To be honest, I think it's just down to different driver styles. A lot of people are really good at, sending it into the corner, getting on the brakes perfectly, and just being able to get the car rotated. I've never been too good at that, so I've always been focused on my exits and getting the power down and not spinning the tires, and I think that that's something that shows up quite a bit in some of these lower grip short tracks, particularly at North Wilkesboro, where there's not a lot of banking. It's a lot flatter, so getting the power down was really important, and I think that definitely helped me a lot on restarts. There wasn't really like a trick to it. It was more just getting out of second gear before you could kind of get to that upper rev range where it started to wheel spin on you. So really, a lot of it was just getting the power down. Going back to your point about, just being able to get through the field. A lot of that was on, getting your exits right as well, not burning up your rear tires too much. So getting the power down was really, really important.
Talk about not burning up those rear tires. The thing that glares out at me here from the telemetry board is the fact that you hadn't been to pit road since lap 55. 95 laps on your tires when you took that checkered flag. Most everybody else only had maybe 40 to 50 laps on their tires. So obviously controlling the restarts was a big part of it, but just how did that car feel on every single one of those restarts? Because you would continue to put heat into those tires, you would continue to wear them down. Was there any point that you felt like maybe this thing isn't going to stay underneath me when I send it into turn 1 this time?
Really, I don't think the tire wear was as bad as someone might have thought, especially if you were able to keep the tires somewhat cool and you didn't really heat them up too much on entry. I think it wasn't too hard to get the power down on the restarts. The biggest thing was really, at least for me, getting the entrances right, because that's always the area where I've been a little bit less confident in, and really getting on the brakes right and getting the car to slide just enough to get the rotation there, but not drift through the corner, not burn up your tires. So I think as long as I could keep the car planted on entry, exit wasn't as big of a deal, especially with how hard it is to pass here. I mean, even with fresher tires, I think you saw it on the last stint of the race, if you didn't have a long green flag run and enough time to really set up those passes, it was really hard to actually get those passes done, which is why I decided to stay out on that last caution, even though a majority of the field pitted, including my teammates, who proceeded to make fun of me for about an entire caution lap about the decision to stay out. But I guess I proved them wrong by being able to win. But yeah, so much about it was just getting the power down, not burning up your tires, and keeping that track position and being able to get that track position when you got set back a little bit.
Well, we looked at your numbers in the last few races, about the last 5 races, 4 finishes up inside the top 10, 3 of them up inside the top 5. You took the points lead, of course, 2 weeks ago at Nashville. You go to victory lane here tonight. You're locked into the playoffs. With all of that weight off your shoulders now, with tracks coming up like Rockingham next week, we've got Tsukuba coming up, we've got Bathurst coming up with that timed race. With having that weight off your shoulders, give you the opportunity to maybe play around with some strategy, or maybe now be a little bit more aggressive to go for victories. Now, how does it change the mentality heading down the remainder of the home stretch of this regular season?
To be honest, it doesn't change my mentality all that much. The goal is still to come out here and win every week. Ideally, I'd like to go on and win the championship, but that's not for a while yet. So I think for now, the focus is still on winning races, getting down these solid results. I've been good the last 2 weeks, but they've both been at short tracks, and I've always been a little bit more inclined to race better at those. I think that short tracks have always been kind of my specialty. So I guess part of the focus will shift towards being better at those intermediate tracks, especially with the finale being at an intermediate track. But in terms of the mentality, I still want to come out here and I still want to win every race. So I wouldn't say it changes the focus too much, especially with I'm not going to say some of my better tracks, but I think tracks that I can be pretty decent at with some of the road courses coming up and Rockingham, which I think I've always been pretty good at. So I don't think it changes the mentality too much, but it is nice to finally have that weight of getting that first win off my shoulders and just knowing that I'll have a spot in the playoffs when the time comes.
There's no doubt about it. You can hear the smile on his face. Jonathan Oates is your winner here tonight in the Motorsport Drop 150 at North Wilkesboro, his first win of his FTF career. Jonathan, we're now going to give you the opportunity to do some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
All right, I got a few. I haven't picked up any sponsors yet. Hey, maybe this race will change something. But I want to give a huge shout-out to my team at First Four Racing. I want to give a shout-out to all my teammates. Isaac Johnson, who is filling in for CJ tonight. Tyler J. Williams. Rudy Valentine. Cirrus Gringe, Casey Nemitz, Jack Painter, and Adam Sweet, who isn't going to be racing anymore, but it's still been awesome to have their support throughout the season. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't be able to do this without my team because it's a fixed setup league, so, an alliance can only go so far, but it's still been great to be able to hang out with them every weekend and kind of learn off each other and try and elevate our team, I guess, to that next level of being able to come out here and win races. So I want to give a huge shout out to my team. I guess I don't know what the league admins will think about this, but I also want to give a shout out to the league that I run. It's Thursday night, so it doesn't conflict with FTF. Hopefully they'll be okay with it. I run a league with the Arca car on Thursday night. If you want to come join, hey, you can DM me on Twitter at TMCSJonathan or on Discord. I'd be happy to sign you up. I guess that's my sponsor shout out for the week. And I guess I'll give a special shout out to Tyler Williams, who wasn't able to race tonight, but told me before the race to win the race for him. I came out here and I won the race for him. So Tyler, this one's for you.
Well, that's Jonathan Oates. He solidifies himself in the playoffs. He gets his first career win here in FTF tonight at North Wilkesboro. Jonathan, we're going to give you the opportunity now to go and celebrate, go enjoy it, and then bring you right back to work here at Rockingham next week.
Thank you, guys. I will hopefully be talking to you in a week's time.
We certainly look forward to that. Obviously, as mentioned, getting that first win, getting that monkey off of your back, we could hear the elation in his voice, but I think it was just as much excitement as it was relief. The fact that he finally has been able to put that 73 in victory lane, because he's been close so many times, especially in the last 5 weeks or so.
Certainly, when he comes so close and can't cap off with a win, it kind of it starts to get to you a little bit, and you can hear it. Smiles all the way around on that team. I'm sure that he's going to be thinking about this race for at least a couple of days afterwards, and probably going to set this in motion to really hit his championship hopes going forward. The win that you get tonight certainly will propel you. He was already locked in the championship based on points, or he was going to be there based on the consistent finishes. But now getting in there on a win, knowing that he's going to be not only the points leader, but a get my sentence out, but a points leader that now has a win attached to him. It's kind of gonna a bit of the cherry on top of the cake, as it were.
There are only 4 regular Grand National Series drivers that have gone to victory lane this season. Jonathan Oates is the only one leaving North Wilkesboro that will have a 1 in the win column inside the top 10 in points. Other drivers just inside the top 15, and Brent Pancari and Jake Poulin, they had their victories at super speedways of Daytona and Talladega. And of course, our winner from a few weeks ago back at Monza, Rudy Valentine, he gains 4 spots in the standings up to 30th, but obviously a bit of a road still to trek for him to get up there, possibly into a playoff spot as well. But, as if it's not already decided that Jonathan Oates was going to make his way into the playoffs, pointing his way in with the momentum he's been on. He gets this win here tonight, and now you got to kind of wonder if there's other guys that are looking at what Jonathan Oates was able to do here tonight. Guys like Andrew Schwartz, Nathan Rabideau, Sean Butler, even Tristan Hagenstein, who's now coming off back-to-back top 3 finishes, and they're looking ahead at some of these tracks like Rockingham. We got those couple of road courses coming up, and they're saying, yep, that's my shot right there. I'm going to go to victory lane for the first time this season. I'm going to solidify my spot in the playoffs in 7 weeks' time.
Yeah, you've got quite the cavalcade of tracks coming up in order to do that. Rockingham is next on the list next week, and will be the last normal race, air quote normal race, that we have for a couple of weeks, because then we go to the Tsukuba Nationals, then we go to Mount Panorama, then we go to the Indianapolis Road Course, which those 3 in succession will throw a bit of a curveball at these drivers, and then we have Michigan, Richmond, and Darlington, and that will be the cutoff for our championship, and then we start it all at Daytona. When we get to Daytona, it's going to be kind of a bit of a relief for some of these drivers, knowing that they kind of a bit of a reset, but for those drivers that get into the championship hunt, they know that is kind of where their championship hopes will start, because after that, it's another bit of interesting races that they'll have to navigate. Daytona, then they're off for 2 weeks, and then they go to Las Vegas, Coca-Cola, Charlotte, but the road course. Then they go to Kansas. Then they go to Detroit. They go to the streets of Belle Isle. Then they go to Martinsville, and then to cap the season off, we have Atlanta. So it's not exactly going to be an easy road ahead for these drivers. It's going to be a fulfilling road for some of them, and certainly, like you said, people that like Hagenstein and the like, they want to get a win in order to do what Jonathan Oates has done tonight and solidify their spot into the playoffs. Although, once they get in, it's very possible that we could have a championship winner without a win, because we had a points leader without a win until tonight. Now that we do, what does that say for the rest of the field going forward?
We're going to have to wait and see. Well, the last couple of races we've had, it's been all about tire strategy of when to come in and get that fresh rubber. Next week in the Speed Visions 200K at Rockingham, it's going to be about who can preserve their tires the best, because Rockingham, it is a good year shredder. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how the strategy plays out in that one as we draw ever closer to the end of the regular season and closer to finding out who our playoff contenders are going to be. But one that we absolutely know for certain now is going to be battling for the championship is going to be Jonathan Oates, as he picks up the victory here tonight in the Motorsports Drop 150K at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Anthony, it's been a great race here tonight at North Wilkesboro. A lot of beating and banging, but that's typical of short tracks. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
It's always fun to come into the booth and enjoy a good bit of racing, and we had a whale of a show tonight, and looking forward to how this championship plays out, because it's looking like it's going to be quite the banger.
No doubt about it. Thanks to everybody that tuned in to Flatout Racing Network's coverage here tonight of the FTF Grand National Series presented by Barr Visuals. Once again, Jonathan Oates is your winner at North Wilkesboro. We'll see you guys next week at Rockingham next Saturday night. Green flag scheduled to fly at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.